believe it or not, over 10% of all American seniors live in a 55 plus community. They are enormously popular, but I don't think they're the right match for a lot of us. And I want you to go in with your eyes open. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you the 5 main reasons I think you should think twice before you decide to live in 55 plus. And the first one is they have the power to fine you, to access charges, additional charges, because they don't like what you did. And not only can they charge you, but they can put a lien against your property to enforce that fine. So the things I'm about to talk about are all things that, you know, if the organization, if the 55 plus community wants to force you to do things their way, they can actually attack your pocketbook, not just be a thorn in your side. So let's jump into some of these. The first one is they have all kinds of rules and regulations. They can tell you whether your adult children can come visit. If they can, they can say how many nights they can stay. If you have grandkids, typically these communities allow grandkids to visit, but only for a very limited amount of time. So imagine that it's Christmas time. It's the holidays and you want to have your grandkids over for 2 weeks and they say, oh, no. They can only be there for 5 nights. You know, that's a problem. And if you say, well, I'm just going to have them stay over anyways, well, go back to point number 1. They can fine you, right? They can dictate how often you have to paint your house, the color that you have to paint your house, the upkeep on your home, how often you have to mow your lawn. They can dictate whether you're allowed to have pets or not, what kind of pet that you can have. Can you have a dog? Can you have a cat? What size dog and cat? Can you have any breed, or are there certain breeds that they don't allow? They can dictate how many cars you're allowed to have, whether you're allowed to have a golf cart on the property, where you're allowed to park those vehicles. So it can be confining, it can be constraining for you. And that's good for some people. They like those rules and regulations, and there's nothing wrong with that. But many people are like, you know what? Live free or die. I don't want all those rules and regulations. The other thing is these communities can be expensive, right? Part of the attraction is they have a lot of amenities. They have a gym, they have a pool, they have a clubhouse, they might have a golf course, right? Well, these things are expensive and they don't come free. There's assessments that have to be paid. There's HOA dues that have to be paid. And what if you're not using some of these amenities? You know, it's not uncommon for some of these communities to have a happy hour once or twice a week, right? And that can be a great way to meet people. But maybe not so good for your health. And maybe long term you'd say, you know what, I'm not going to do the happy hours anymore. Well, guess what? Your dues are paying for other people's drinks, other people's happy hours. So they can get expensive. Maybe they have a gym, and at first you like the gym, but then, you know, there's a special treadmill that you like using, or a special elliptical machine, or different types of weights. And you know what? The gym down the street has that, but your gym at the community doesn't. Well, you can go down the street if you want to work out, but you're still paying those dues, so they can get expensive. And oftentimes there's no cap on the amount that the community can charge you. So you've got to be careful, even if you go in and say, well, it's $300 a month, it's $500 a month, whatever the fee is, and you feel that the amenities are worth that, so you're happy to pay it. That can change down the road. They can decide, you know, they're not going to have a pool anymore. You know, they're going to hide behind liability reasons and say, oh, we have to shut down the pool now because somebody got hurt. Well, maybe that was one of the reasons you thought paying $300 a month or whatever the fee is was fine. So all of these things are outside of your control. The other thing is the 55 plus communities that tend to be the most popular, the ones where it's the easiest to sell properties in, are the newer ones. Everybody wants to go where the gym and the clubhouse and all the facilities are brand spanking new. And that's probably where a lot of folks watching this video, if you decide to move to 55 plus, you're likely going to move into one of the newer facilities. But what happens 10, 15, 20 years later when you decide to move and now your facility is not the new one? The new one is a mile down the street that has all the new amenities. And your community is a second or a third choice. It can be expensive, and it can kind of lock you into this, unfortunately, buy high and sell low situation, because so many of us, by the time we get to 55 plus, is like, I don't want the headaches. I don't want the headaches of having to upkeep a property. I like the idea that there's a community and it's all inclusive and it takes care of all these repairs. And of course, part of that is we want the newer community, we want the newer facilities. So when it comes time for us to sell our property in a 55 plus community, maybe that community is not so popular anymore, but we're locked into it. And maybe there's some fines that have been levied on us that we're like, oh, I'm not paying those fines. Well, when it comes time to sell your property, if there's a lien on the property because of that, and if the organization has the legal right to put that lien, if you want to sell your property, you're paying off those fines. Okay, let's keep going. The other thing is just thinking about the financial health of the community. If you look in Florida, this is a big issue where different communities have been putting off repairs that were necessary, and they didn't build up a big enough of a reserve. And now there's going to be special assessments. So imagine you pay $500,000 for a property in a nice 55 plus community, and then you get hit with a $50,000 special assessment. None of us want that. So, to protect yourself from that, you want to look at their meeting notes. You want to look at the current budget. You want to look at the financial statements. If you're in a state where they have to report their financial statements, you want to look at that. You want to make sure that there has not been deferred maintenance that you're going to have to pay for, right? You want to make sure that there's reserves set up. And as we've seen in Florida, a lot of these locations do not have the proper reserve setting up. Okay, speaking of looking at the meeting notes, another thing the meeting notes can be helpful with is, seeing how they've made decisions on maintenance, but also just getting an idea of, what are the topics that are being raised? Are these topics that are important to you, or do they seem petty? If they seem petty, this might not be the community for you, right? I mean, we want to vibe with our neighbors. The last thing we want when we reach this age is to have conflict with our neighbors. And that leads me to my next point, which is people are complex. And you get into a 55 plus community, you get into a community where a lot of people are retired, well, maybe they miss some of the influence that they used to have back when they were working, some of the power that they might have had. And maybe they're starting to exercise that now in the 55 plus community. And if they're the president of the organization or they have an officer position, they can have influence, whether you like it or not, over your life. So look at the meeting notes. Spend as much time as you can in that community. Try to befriend some people. Try to go to the happy hours. Try to be there as much as you can, just to make sure that you vibe with people there. I can tell you 25 years ago, when my wife and I bought our house that we lived in for over 20 years, the smartest thing she did was she went knocking door to door and said, hey, we're thinking about buying in this community. Can I chat with you about the neighborhood and things like that? And you know what? That paid off in spades. I was super proud of her for doing that. And it's the same thing here. You want to make sure that you're going to vibe with the people. You don't want people sticking their nose into your business and then having conflict. Life is too short for that. Okay, let's keep going. The other thing, if you're a woman, this is good to know. In these communities, there tend to be a lot more women than there are men. And right now you might be married, but in 20 years, maybe some changes. Maybe your spouse has a health issue. Maybe your spouse passes away. Maybe you get divorced. Who knows? I hope none of these things happen. But it's important to note, believe it or not, the ratio of women to men in these 55 plus communities is 3 to 1. So if you're a guy, the odds are in your favor. But if you're a woman, just be aware of that. The other thing I want you to be aware of is making sure that you're enjoying your time in your 50s and 60s. And that's why I made this video here. 8 things to stop doing in your 50s and 60s to enjoy your journey until you get to retire.